There's a question I keep coming back to when I think about what AI is actually doing to our economy. And it's not the question most people are probably asking. It's not about productivity. It's not about GDP, not really even just like job loss in the abstract. It's more about our professional purpose. It's about what happens to a person when they worked 25 years mastering the craft that defined their entire career, and it quietly stops being the thing the world really needs. My guest today has lived that question from the inside. She's a service design pioneer. She worked at Intuit, Mural, at NASA, and now designs life safety systems for people living with diabetes, and who also built something called Zero Vector, an open curriculum trying to map the career paths that don't even exist yet for roles that haven't been named yet. Erika Flowers thinks very carefully about what disruption actually costs a career and what might be possible to build in its wake. I'm really glad she's here. I think you will be too. Erika, welcome to the show.
Thank you, John. Thank you for that introduction. I can't believe that's my intro. I'm like, I didn't do all that, but what?
Well, it's funny. I hate saying, can you give us a little bit of background, but I don't know how else to start with you because you've got this incredible background, but give the audience maybe a compressed version of your career. Like, where did it start? And then we'll talk a lot about service design, but maybe like the through line of service design, how did that become the lens from how you see things?
My career is, it's very atypical. I was a little bit late to computers. I got my first computer with Windows 95 when I was 14 or 15 in 1995. It was brand new.
Right.
I just jumped into that, and then it had the internet. I was like, okay, we got to do this. And so that was like in 9th grade. And I started to make websites with HTML that like right then and upload them to our local ISP. And I was just like, this is incredible. I'm like, let's drop out of high school. And so I drop out of high school and I take the GED, the good enough diploma. And I just start working as a web designer for $6 an hour for a company in town, just making small business websites. I've never looked back since. I went to college year on, year off, year on, year off for the next 6 years to get a bachelor's degree in psychology and English. And then I just kept working on the web and moving from company to company and like keep on trying to like do more and do bigger. It was like I had to move from this little town in Utah to Salt Lake City. And I'm like, oh, Salt Lake City, this is a go nowhere town. I thought it was the big city, but after I got there, I'm like, this isn't a big city. So it's like, where's the biggest play I can do? I'm like, let's go to Silicon Valley. We started in 1998. It's now been 15 years. And so I go to an Adaptive Path service design conference in November of 2013 to learn about it. And I meet somebody from Intuit who was there looking for people to hire to do service design for the QuickBooks Care ecosystem. And I sit down next to them randomly at a table and I go, you're looking at everybody else and not the speakers. Are you trying to recruit people? And they're like, oh my God, I am. So I take their card in November. I have a job offer in February of 2014. And I stay there for the next 8 years. And then I leave, after those 8 years in California, having met billionaires. And then COVID hits. It's like, we got to get out of California. And so then I moved to Maine, and where I live now, to like be like a remote worker. But the whole point of all this story is, before we get to like, how do you get to NASA, is I still, to this day, I feel like a nobody's nobody.
So first of all, thank you for that like walkthrough of your career path. And I love the origin story, if you will, the bumps and bruises along the way, but also like just this conviction of kind of this aha moment back in the early days of computers and the internet. It's just brilliant. Let's fast forward. So in the 90s, you're doing this amazing work, but it's very kind of in the computer web design. I want to fast forward to when I first came across you, and I was just learning about service design, and we probably should give a little bit of what the heck is service design, because I think a lot of people know UX, maybe journey mapping. But at that time, you were working on a book, or I guess a pamphlet that became something way bigger with Morgan
Yeah.
Miller. Can you talk a little bit about practical service design, how you and Morgan
Yeah.
met, what came of that, how did that develop?
Yeah. I was using what I had learned about service design and service blueprinting from those adaptive path workshops that I'd taken and been really first exposed to it in 2013 and 14. And it was, very famous design leaders now, Patrick Quattlebaum and Chris Risden from Adaptive Path. They had hosted the workshop, and I was go up, I want to learn all about this. I'm going to do it into it. And so I get back into it and I'm trying to do it. And I saw this world of UX where no one knew how to do any of this. And these UX designers weren't thinking about this at all. So I was like, well, I should write a book called Practical Service Design. And I registered that domain. First things first, you just go register a domain. You don't need a vision or a plan. You just need a domain. And I register the domain and I email, I had talked to an editor at O'Reilly Publishing. And I say, hey, this is your one chance. You better give me a book with an animal on the cover to do practical service design. And they're like, no way, get out of here. So I was like, you want to bet? And I took that personally. And so I decided I'm going to redefine service blueprinting and service design and write this book myself so that 10 years from now, I can have my own book with 100,000 copies in circulation and not had to have somebody publish it for me. And of course, they were correct to not publish a nobody's book. We had no draft, no idea. I just knew that service design was so arcane and so squishy. If we didn't make it practical, no one's going to be able to adopt it in the world of UX. Because this is 12 years ago.
I kind of want to go from like those days of like website to practical service design and your through line of like Intuit and Mural and NASA. We'll talk about NASA too, because I want to ask you about that. But Erika, can you give us, like you settled on something called zero vector. So I want to have you walk us through, if you can, in a way that we can understand and digest it. What does it mean? What is it? Why do you think the design world needs a word for it? Or why does business need a word for it? And I think what might be helpful, Erika, is, so the British Design Council, I believe, came up with the double diamond. Would it be helpful for you to talk about the double diamond first to get into zero vector? What are your thoughts?
Yeah. I mean, the double diamond, it's the assembly line, of loosely coupled experiences that go from a concept to, the delivery to a customer at the end, where it's called the double diamond because it starts with something small and you explore and converge out to generate ideas and, come up with potential avenues. And then you converge down at the close of the first diamond into a potential solution. And then when you have a potential solution, you open it back up to the second diamond and you diverge out into potential implementations of a solution. And then once you test and learn your way into something that you think will work, converge back down into the second point of the second diamond, which is the final, proposed solution that becomes the thing you go build and ship. And so basically it's like you have an unknown, you go broad, and then you come up with ideas, and then you narrow down on one idea, then you have that one idea, then you go broad, come up with ways to do the idea, and then narrow down on the way you want to do the idea that has the most potential. And so that can take days, weeks, months, years, or it can take never, because you fail out of it at some point, like trying to ride across a tightrope on a unicycle, like you probably are going to fall.
That's what the .com era, the big bust back in 2000, there's a lot of that, like we'll build something and then there was no real thinking about the double diamond. So the zero vector, okay, so we got the double diamond framework. Tell us about the zero vector.
That is, the idea of that is getting rid of the idea of separating the think and make components of what was necessitated by the translations and handoffs and the duration it took to go from coming up with an idea and a concept to knowing what to build and, making the much more expensive decision to move forward with something. And so it was like measure twice, cut once, the old construction workers motto.
Right.
And it's like, it's very expensive to, get out your board lengthener when you make a cut too short. And no such thing as a board lengthener. You go to Home Depot and buy more wood because you screwed up. You cut it wrong because you didn't measure twice. And so you mitigate the downstream risk and the expensive cost of restarts, of backtracking, by doing a lot of planning up front, getting really certain, and then going and doing the more expensive build. And once you start to do that, you're kind of committed. Well, that was a reaction to how hard it was to render technology in a way that's realistic and believable and testable enough to use in the upfront concept and iteration and determination phase. Mm-hmm. Well, it really, there were lots of attempts to shorten that process or shortcut that process or collapse it down. But the birth of what, agentic design and development, with AI coding has allowed us to do is make that what used to be a flow of a process. It isn't really one now where one is consumed the other, and it's not one where they're concentric circles. It's taken these two separate things and reconstituted them as a new alloy together. And so it's like iron and carbon. Those aren't two separate metals that you mix together and have iron carbon or carbon iron, or like you have steel. The process of zero vector is that we are doing everything at once because you can have your idea and you can bring a real version of your idea bring it to life almost as you think it, and then test it in real time. And that breaks the whole system because now you don't have to wait for anything. And that is not iterative. That is a step change that we do not have a precedent for in design and development.
So I'm gonna read some of this back for myself, but also for our listeners, people watching this. So, it wasn't long ago where someone would have an idea, they might be whiteboarding, they might sketch something out, they might give it to someone to like Photoshop or 3D model. It was some graphic software. You might talk to a couple product managers, some developers, maybe some user experience designers, a variety of skills. And then it would go into some form of a prototype, whether it's a product, a web experience, a mobile app, what have you, right? And that, as you said, it could be hours, days, weeks, months, or years, or never. And one example I'm seeing today, and this is something probably run a whole nother episode, but is vibe coding an example that you can call out right now, like that is changing everything?
Okay, so vibe coding, it's using really like fast and easy, like language-based prompting to have an AI take what you said and try to make its best attempt at creating a finished product. And so that's where I draw the line to say, yeah, that is vibe coding and it works. But that's more of like creating a simulacrum of a toy in the browser. And you didn't go through any of the business modeling or like the logistics of developing software, which is what we build. People don't like to say that, say apps and products, but it's in the browser, it's software. And so, yes, you used AI to make code, to make a thing, but that is vibe coding. It's just throwaway tools. It's just you're seeing something quickly, and you can do it to say, I want to test an interaction where when I click on something, it comes up in a novel way. But that's like the tip of an iceberg of so many different architectural decisions and like product development decisions that you skipped over. It's not viable. Problem is it gets a bad rap, and that becomes what everybody thinks AI coding and design and development is. And it's almost the exact opposite of what like zero vector is doing. And so vibe coding, the action you take, which is describing something with words or your microphone or typing, and an AI interpreting it and rendering it, that's the same. But when I'm doing it, to go to the other end of the example, I'm vibe coding the API contract of like what's going to go on either end of like the endpoint and like the call for the API. I'm vibe coding ideas about how a database schema could be laid out to like have like maximum traversability. I'm vibe coding, a 12-page PRD that then we're going to vibe code and break into different sections, and then vibe code putting those into sequential GitHub issues, then vibe code having an agent take one issue at a time. And it's like, well, now your vibe coding is say one thing, get one thing. Zero vector, like whatever, agentic design and development is saying we're still doing most of the same stuff, but we're doing it with language with the AI. One component and method at a time. And people will say, oh, it creates all the spaghetti code. It's like, I will sit and vibe code into a microphone, one specific method or one specific function or one specific code fragment back and forth with the agents to the point to that it's like we're just working on one call, or like the elegance of one endpoint, or like the elegance of one API contract. And that's where, if you don't know what any of those words meant, you can't actually do it. And most designers didn't deal with like database schema and API and those types of computer science terms.
You prompted the question that I was just about to ask you. So when you say GitHub or API, like 50% of the audience knows, 50% of the audience has, it's Greek to them. It's completely foreign. So I want to kind of pivot back to Zero Vector at the end of the show, because I want to go deeper into it. I want to go deeper into Zero Vector at the end so people can really grasp what you're trying to put out there, because I think it's incredibly timely in Q1, Q2 of 2026. I think it's incredibly valuable, and I think you're onto something. And I will just say that it's compressing everything we've known over the last quarter century. It's compressing it and offering it. So I want to come back to Zero Vector, okay?
Okay.
But before we do that, I want to ask you a couple of things. Not only today where you're working in insulin and diabetes, but also you were at NASA. And I want to bring this up for a couple reasons. We're talking about big, high stakes things. Can you talk about how like classified intelligence or siloed teams, can you talk about the high stakes part of NASA from your experiential side?
I was as unfamiliar of the change as anyone. And NASA, it's a government agency that operates in much the same way as all the other types of government agencies. So there were people I worked with from the Department of Labor, Department of Transportation. There were people from National Institute of Health, the CDC. And so NASA is like that. And what NASA is dealing with is climate science, space exploration and like space flight, but also like unmanned space, like satellites, like things like that go up, the telescopes, the Hubble, the James Webb. And then also NASA is doing a whole lot of information brokering with what they gather. And so data about the environment, data about space, data about just everything that has to do with national aeronautics.
When you came in, what did they ask? What were you being asked to do?
Well, the parts of NASA that you see that are like the astronaut parts or like the JPL building robots part, so that's a really small part of it. I specifically worked for the chief information officer in that office. And what I was doing there was I was working at what basically amounts to NASA's IT department and like the infrastructure and the nervous system of what all of the specialists use. So it was a horizontally facing role. And so I worked out of the headquarters mission, Washington, D.C., and they provided kind of the IT layers and the different capabilities to all the different places. And so they all needed the internal IT infrastructure. And so I was brought in there, and this is where the story takes kind of like one of those Cinderella twists. So one day, somebody working in another very prominent governmental agency was like, we got your book. We used your book.
Practical Service Design book?
Yeah, this book.
Yeah.
We got your book. To blueprint some really important mission critical stuff for some things that have applications in something very unexpected. This wasn't designed. This was like, and I was like, oh my God, are you kidding me? I'm like, this is amazing. And then what happened is that person moved in to work at NASA. And then I was like, I want to have the chance to do that there, because they needed to apply design thinking and facilitation or like workshopping skills for the IT organization. And what I joined was the NASA Digital Service, which was modeled after the United States Digital Service, which is something that was initially created in the Obama administration. And their first big thing they stood up was healthcare.gov.
Oh, wow.
You can go look up the Time magazine cover of the United States Digital Service being featured as the heroes who brought healthcare.gov back online to launch Obamacare. So I was bringing like tech expert Silicon Valley models methods and professional frameworks into how NASA's IT department then surfaced services and internal products to all those other organizations.
So you're bringing kind of more technical and I would say Silicon Valley or business-minded thinking, user experience, service design, human-centered design, to that government entity inside of like an IT organization. Can I ask, how long were you there?
Oh, wow. I started in June of 2023, and I was there through, what was it? I left in April of 2025 because, and that was a result of the new administration's, executive orders, and the, specifically the one from DOGE, and specifically Executive Order 14168, which was the prohibition of acknowledging transgender people in the federal government. And so at that point, it was not as abrupt and forced out like similar orders that discharged transgender service members from the military, which they were forced, but as a citizen and a civilian, I couldn't be dismissed necessarily outright. However, the executive order, it created an environment that amounted to a constructive dismissal that could not remain anymore. And so it was just like that. It was just over. And so from January to April of 2025, I just had to find a new job. That was just it. And so that's where I ended up, where I am now.
So two things. One, I'm glad where you're at because I want to talk about Insulet. This is an amazing, so NASA's high stakes. You're bringing some different thinking, and the word disruption comes to mind. You're kind of disrupting the way they were doing things. Can I ask you a favor? Can you come to my DMV and redo the experience at the Department of Motor Vehicles?
Well, that's what I tell people, that NASA was kind of like working at the DMV for space. It's like you think it's like the TV shows, and you think it's like Joel Kinnaman on Apple TV's For All Mankind and stuff. It's like, no. It's like working at the DMV for space. The last thing I really got to do there was help design the NASA AI readiness strategy based on the idea of a change management from like a tech industry mindset of we want to up level the interior of the like technical capabilities of this organization by looking at how can we use LLMs and GPTs and like consumer off-the-shelf AIs for the average worker inside of NASA. And most of the average worker at NASA or any agency are just kind of normal people.
So you're now at Insulet, correct?
Yes, Insulet, making diabetes pumps, and here I'll show you one. The diabetes tubeless like wearable insulin pumps that are like smart, connected to your phone and to devices.
So Erika, this is where it gets super interesting to me too, because like around design thinking and like mobile apps and web experiences and UX, that's all cool and it's important, and you create a bigger button on the mobile phone or whatever. But when you start working about health care, and it's beyond just like a bad UX, it's way beyond just bad user experience. It starts to become about someone's health, their well-being, their life safety. So kind of going back to like the NASA thing, it's high stakes in a different way, but this is also high stakes, is it not, in this space that you're in now?
Yeah. So, aerospace and NASA dealt with, national security and, not just the danger of space travel, which is dangerous enough, but also the danger of, NASA gets basically nonstop cyber attacks on every port, on every network, nonstop, right? Because a missile is just a rocket with a bomb on top.
Right,
and if you can hijack that, so it's like so dangerous. And then of course the human space flight aspect of it. And I tell you what, I've had the privilege, and I don't mean that ironically, I've had the privilege of taking the official NASA trainings on what have we learned from Columbia and Challenger and Apollo 13 and like those internal postmortems of what happened. So that's like one type of sensitivity. Then working in like medical devices and things that augment what would have been like people's natural like pancreas or like insulin production
Right.
or the things that, someone is born with type 1 diabetes, or for lots of reasons develops type 2 diabetes. It's like, those are now in design. We used to say, like, when you're working at like a B2B SaaS startup, it's like, we're not curing cancer. Like, what's the big deal?
Right.
Well, when you're working in something that like is like a debilitating condition like diabetes, you are working in something that can be life or death. And there are instances where somebody will rely on insulin and their insulin pump, and they will die if something goes wrong, and they will die very quickly. And so you're dealing with something in that kind of nature where, like, the point I was trying to make was, it's so different than tech. It's not tech, it's medical. And NASA was not tech, it was aerospace. And so I have no idea what I'm doing in either industry. I'm like SaaS startup, like things that have low stakes, normally.
Yeah. And now in insulin, it's high stakes. It's personal life experience, life safety. Are you still kind of applying, and this is what I find interesting. Here we are, as I mentioned, 2026. The agentic AI space has just blown up the last 3-4 years. Because of your career, because of your centricity around experience and service design, what is happening today with those two worlds of AI, agentic capability? We'll talk about zero vector. I want to go deep into that, but at Insulet and in the industry in general, how are you seeing these two worlds coming together with AI at Insulet in the experience, like service design? How are you bringing those worlds together right now?
Well, it's not happening at all at the day job. And so that's, kind of let's call that a meta conversation designers and companies need to have right now, which is, while the world is shifting from Pony Express to telegraphs, if you are unable to trust the telegraph for whatever reason, it doesn't matter. And that's like the question of, what do companies now have to do when they either are too regulated or have things that have multi-year life cycles and you can't just jump, or it's a training and an upskilling and like changing the internal structuring of how scaled, agile, massive software development shops, how would you even switch on that? And then you add in all the fear and uncertainty and doubt of what people hear on the news.
With that in mind, so at Insulet, you're kind of, and I'll use the word traditional, you're kind of applying traditional service design thinking and blueprinting to the experience for the insulin patient or for the backstage of what's happening at Insulet. Like, where are you applying what you're doing?
I work mostly on the onboarding for like new patients,
okay,
and new like customers of the product. And so looking at it as my area of focus presently is the experience of getting a prescription, going to your doctor, going and learning how to use the thing, using it for the first month. Where did you even hear about it? Did you see an ad on TV? Like, we have ads on streaming. Like I'll be watching Hulu, and since it like picks up on the cookies, or Alexa is listening, I'll see an ad for my own product. I'm like, oh, that's cool. I didn't know we had a TV commercial. And it's like, well, then where do they go? Do they go to the website, and how do they learn about it? And they don't even know what it is. And do they, those commercials where it's like, talk to your doctor about whatever, it's like that. It's like, yeah, why do they say talk to your doctor about it? It's because the customer has no idea what to even ask. It's like, hey, I heard about this insulin pump while I was watching a rerun of,
that whole onboarding experience. That's kind of what you're focusing on.
Well, onboarding is a software interface experience that accomplishes a goal. I'm looking at it as being more like, how do you effectively educate someone to know that they have a problem, they understand that the solution exists, how the solution works, and then how do you navigate them between disparate touch points? Because the onboarding is a series of a handful of screens they do on their phone or their computer. But that isn't the sitting in the doctor's office for 45 minutes scanning a QR code to learn about the whatever. That isn't having to go to your pharmacy and pick up your thing and you get home, and when you open it and you realize you don't know what to do with it because your iPhone is out of date and it doesn't work with the Bluetooth in the thing. Like that's all the stuff that when you talk about service design and blueprinting, it's like the onboarding experience of what you design in Figma is 10% of what it takes to go from being somebody who's just discovered this new device and this medical solution to effectively using it. And it's a much bigger picture. It's a much more complicated orchestration. And so it's the same thing with like medical devices. Like onboarding is like this little tiny part. The bigger picture of what the human has to do to go through this arduous process of having this condition that impacts their life in such a negative way. And then they have to go through doctors and insurance and pharmacies and everything we hate. How do you make that delightful? There's nothing delightful about having to get this thing to help you with your debilitating, life-altering disease. So what do? That's what I see it when we talk about the onboarding. Otherwise, people will think I'm just having you click through screens, through steps, like you're filling out an eHarmony dating profile.
You touched on something I want to poke at a little bit, and it's kind of where I think we're at right now, Erika, which is the world is moving at 25 miles an hour in a little neighborhood in their car. That's the world. And technology and AI is moving like at a rocket ship speed.
Yeah. It's not even worth keeping up with.
The reality of a company, whether any company on the planet of scale, especially.
Or other planets.
Or other planets. For them to just apply AI and say, let's go at any major automotive manufacturer, let alone regulated industries, financial services or pharmaceuticals or health med devices, even retail, the reality, correct me if I'm wrong, but the reality is it's not just a quick switch. So these traditional principles of understanding the experience, the human experience at the front stage, go back to service design, and understanding the tools, technology, systems, and the people behind the backstage, that is still foundational, is it not?
It's. I always say I have 3 books that are my top 3 go-tos that I tell everyone to read if they're wondering what to do. So what are those 3 books that people should be focusing on more now? And especially if it's a designer audience or a disruptor audience, it's always the same thing. Lean Startup by Eric Ries.
I love it.
Any of Clayton Christensen's books, Competing Against Luck or The Innovator's Dilemma, or there's like a sequel to one or both of those. Doesn't matter, just either one of those. And then my favorite, and this is the one that you got to mix in, which is the Blue Ocean Strategy books. There's 2. There's like a revised one. Those then give you in my book,
right?
My product, where you can map out the human experiences because like you still have a front stage and a backstage, you still have an organization and a customer and the cognitive ergonomics between those 2 things. And then you can actually hone in on like what needs to happen to make what I'm trying to build or deliver or manifest for the people I'm serving, the customers, the visitors, the guests, whatever you call them. And then you need to have the tools be loosely coupled, but like you're not really married to anything, so that the moment that Claude Opus 4.7 is probably going to come out tomorrow. Who knows? I mean, GPT 5.4 just came out like last night.
Yeah.
Well, who cares? Because you already built this radical thing in your service blueprint where it's like at step 7, an AI takes the customer's data, takes the whatever, comes up with a thing, represents something, and represents with them with an AI-driven adaptive choice that shows them, do you want to have option A, B, or C? Because you've been gathering information about them as they onboard or things and then you provide an experience in real time that's molded to them. Which actual technology solve you used in the back end, it doesn't really matter because it's going to change tomorrow. And if this is where like I really think designers and people need to study how APIs work, both technically, but the theory of it, it's like decouple your customer experiences from the specific technology in your mind that's producing it. And then you'll be able to make amazing, like service design oriented, like real human centered orchestrated experiences. And as the pieces that run it behind the scenes improve. You just swap them out and change them. And that's like the two things to me going on at once. So you need like a bleeding edge AI innovation lab in your companies, and you need a service design, customer oriented organization. And those two work together. You'll be able to think and make in one action, and things that used to take quarters can now take hours or maybe days to loop around and iterate on, because the whole reason it took quarters was all just the overhead of how long it takes for the Pony Express to get a letter from Missouri to San Francisco. Now you have a telegraph.
I kind of subscribe to what you're talking about. And I've heard others say a similar approach. I heard someone talk about it in the context of large companies trying to apply AI into what they do. And they were basically saying, create kind of like you're talking about, create this like lab, create this team that basically is over here replicating what your business is doing, but all in on like technology and AI capabilities. Yeah. So I think that's brilliant. I think that it kind of reflects what you're talking about. But I love also kind of your notion of doubling down on the experience side. Like I love that.
I won't plug my own stuff, but I'm working on like also like an entire front end that uses the APIs from the major LLMs like Gemini and ChatGPT. I guess I should say Google, OpenAI, and Anthropic, who use their own APIs to create products called Gemini, ChatGPT, and Claude. Right. But from the outside, I love Anthropic. I'm like all in on Anthropic. But as I use Claude, I'm like, this is missing so much from me as the customer and the experience of what I need as like a user, a power user of these tools. I'll just rebuild a whole new front end that's built with the principles of like human-centered design, service design, and like design outside in experience of using it, and like what do I need it to do. And that's where Lean Startup, Blue Ocean, and Jobs to be Done has allowed me to create a totally new front end that has all of the capabilities that something like Claude.ai or ChatGPT.com have, but then so much more that fit the actual job to be done of a person who is hiring a commercial LLM to do something for them. I had to rebuild a whole new front end. And now this whole new front end, it has so many more like human-centered design-based affordances and experiences and interactions. It's like, I feel like I'm using the products for the first time, and they're doing things that the big commercial players don't have to do because they make most of their money selling their API to be ingested into other products. And the front end, the $20 a month thing, I mean, that's not their core business model.
Erika, you just talked about a couple things that companies should do. And I love that because it's giving those who are listening who might be senior level, C-level, or even leading like teams within an organization, you gave them kind of this idea of like build a creative lab that can like ideate, and like, I love that. And also keeping it experiential. But if someone is listening or watching that's mid-career and they're in this space and they're leveraging these tools, maybe they have a similar experience background or product design background, are they at risk, and what would you tell them they should do? What are 3 or 4 things you should do right now? What would you tell them?
Well, there's the first like soul searching question about like what do you feel like your purpose as in your work is. And is it, are you, when you ride for the Pony Express, is it because you loved horses or because you loved mail? And do you love mail, or do you love delivering messages? Or do you love delivering messages, or do you love communication? How can I keep doing that? And so like you're in that phase of the career, or maybe you have a specialty. I started the episode, I started 30 years ago. I was like a kid doing this stuff. So I've had to change modalities. People don't think about this. I'm like some LinkedIn blowhard telling everyone ditch Figma and change. I've probably changed modalities 3 or 4 major times.
The first thing you're telling people is soul search. What are some other things you would tell? Yeah, I love it. I mean,
figure out what is it you're good at. Are you good at operating the software, or are you good at saying like, look, we need to let people hail cabs from their phone and have just like other people with a phone get a message to come pick them up because nobody wants to call a taxi. And that's what Uber is.
Is there something is there an instinct that AI cannot replicate in your mind?
I don't naturally think that AI is doing anything for me. And so I think that I can't answer that question like semiotically
Yeah.
because it's like, can the basketball do anything that you can't, Michael Jordan? It's like, what a dumb question. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
I'm the player. I control the ball. The ball does what I want. What do you mean? Is the ball going to shoot itself? Who would ask that? And if you're trying to invent a ball that shoots itself, what are you even doing? That's how I hear these questions. And so it's like, do I think AI can have taste? Do I think AI can make decisions? Do I think AI can have instinct? Those are ridiculous questions. That's not how you use it. That's not how I use it. That's not what it's for. You have taste. You have instincts. You can iterate. Figure out how to augment that with the new tools.
Right.
I don't think AI can or should be thought of as a replacement for anything. It's like, I'm a novelist. I'm a sci-fi novelist. I'm building a product called Fictioneer, which is like an AI-powered, it's like Jarvis from Iron Man, except instead of fighting villains, you're writing novels and Jarvis helps you. Say, well, is that AI going to write your novel? It's like, no, not at all. It's going to do the exact opposite. It's going to help me write my novel. And that's the difference in the approach of the builder, where I'm building something that takes away the overhead that prevents me from delivering my product or my art to people by having a computer do things at a speed and efficiency that I can't do, but allows me to do the thing that I do, which is come up with a story, figure out how I want it to be represented, figure out how I want it to make people feel, make sure people do feel how I want.
You take the kind of like, let it add value to what you already are doing, augment rather than complete replacement. I want to go through some quick fire questions, just like yes, no, maybe, or just quick answers. So we talked about the double diamond very early on in the conversation. Is the double diamond, based on what we talked about, is the double diamond dead? Is that completely gone, not worth anything?
So this is what me and Jim Kalbach, who is from Mural, he wrote Mapping Experiences. He's a offline friend of mine. We were talking about this last week. I wrote articles like the double diamond isn't going away anywhere. Again, this is like, I don't know what it is about me or what it is about whatever, or if these questions are meant to just spark conversation, but it's like the stuff in the double diamond is not going away. That's like saying like, if we don't deliver letters by horse, is letters going away? It's like, what are you talking about? Not you. They're like, what do you mean? No, of course not. Everything in the double diamond still happens.
Still the same process, just different ways, right?
Different. No, it's different. You got to think about it as it's not something that happens in a big sequence and handoff anymore. It's something that's imbued together and happens not necessarily like all at once, but it's able to have the round trip be so synchronous that you can kind of do any part of it at once. And so instead of a linear or serialized process, which is like what it is, this is almost like computational logic of like chip architecture. You can have parallel objects where you can do a little research, a little prototyping, a little validating, a little high fidelity, a little low, all at once in parallel in any order you want. And it all comes together to a central zero vector point. And that's why I called it that, because this whole idea of linearity of the process doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it does go back to lean UX, this think, make, check, cyclical kind of like, and just rapid fire. I want to ask you about tools or resources you think everyone in this space should be using right now, but probably aren't.
Okay, let's think about this. I mean, it really feels like this has been the last, 3, 4, 5, 6 months that it kind of reached a tipping point. This is like Jeffrey Moore's Crossing the Chasm. It jumped from like the innovators and early adopters into that like early majority, right? Late majority, like everyone's doing this. Yeah. I think my thing is like, look, what we are doing now is really fundamental, old school computer science and software development. And so it's like, I don't think people need to like learn the terminal. I don't think they need to go research like Alan Kay and Smalltalk. They should, they don't have to. They don't need to know who Dennis Ritchie is. They don't need to go and like study compilers. They don't need but that stuff now is accessible to everybody. And most of software and most of products, most of processes exist because making digital things was so difficult. And so you had to create all these different layers. But now, like the tools people should be using is their library card and understand what is a database, like not conceptually, like really, what is it? What is Postgres? What is a vector database? Why does it work? And now you can start doing things that normally you would have had to have whole other experts to do. But you now, since AI has closed the gap of executing knowledge based on your decision, knowing the fundamentals now is more important than ever, because then you can select from the tools or use pretty like general multi-purpose tools like Claude Code. Claude Code just like executes commands in the terminal through like Bash, which is decades old. You don't need any specific tool. I don't use any specific vendor tool, and I'm inventing and making things and like launching products that never would have been possible. It's like, what's my stack? My stack is this microphone, 8 different or more Claude Code instances that are just writing different programming languages in my different terminals, in Firefox. It's like, well, aren't you using Cursor? Rather than like, no, I'm not using anything. Well, don't you? I use VS Code. Sometimes I look at the code, but you don't need any of those tools. Those are all second order tools that are just wrapping on the core fundamentals that go back to what like Douglas Engelbert's mother of all demos, where he showed the first usage of a mouse and like networked computers. We don't actually need most products on top of it. You need markdown files, you need a terminal, and you need a browser to like hot module reload what you're building to see it come to life. And every product we have is essentially now something that can be rendered in the browser. So people need to be studying fundamentals because the tools are going to change so quickly. Next week, there's going to be some other tool. You don't need any of these because those things, all they are doing is doing what you could do when you talk into your microphone directly to any of the things running in the terminal, those agents that can just execute what you want anyways. And so this is like hiring the Pony Express when you have a telegraph. Why?
I want to circle all the way back to what you're doing. So you're working at Insulet, you're applying these incredible like skills, 25 years of experience or more around design, human-centered design, experience, your computer background, service design. So you're applying that at work, but outside of work, tell me what you're working on. We mentioned Zero Vector, but tell me what you're really excited about and help us understand what you're working on and where people can find what you're working on, that sort of thing.
The thing that really right now excites me, and the thing that I feel like I've been given like a new lease on career, but more than that, like of like invention and creativity, is first of all the communal democratization of the knowledge to do this. And I really take a pretty militant or like radical stance on the knowledge and the learning and the capabilities. Not only should they be free monetarily, but they should be free, like, real, militant, free open source software champion. Richard Stallman said, all this digital should be free as in freedom, not just free as in money. So that's why Open Vector is like the Zero Vector. I want to build it up to be like a curriculum, like learning center, where everything I'm talking about, all the fundamentals, the principles, what you need to do to learn to do this, everything from like really specific stuff, like how do you do it where you're actually building a shipping code, to how do you learn what Git is? Oh my gosh, designers and people, they've never even heard of version control. We want them to like go and like fork a branch and then push a whatever and run a commit. And it's like, they're just like, I don't know what any of this is. Well, I want to teach them that. Because this to me is like when I would go, I have a young son, he's 16, but way back, I'd go and teach the Cub Scouts at the school how to do stuff. Because it's like, you need to know how to use a pocket knife. You need to know how to start a fire. It's like, people need to know how to do that. And so I don't think that we should be gatekeeping or charging money for like frontier survival skills. So that's where the Open Vector part, like my mission right now is I want to create such a accessible place where we take complicated things and make them accessible without simplifying them, is the first mission. And I want to have it be out there kind of in like a Wikipedia. My inspiration is Wikipedia and Linux, because even though Jimmy Wales and Linus Torvalds, they've been very successful. They have more money than I will ever earn in my life. they still made something that is free. Wikipedia is free. Linux is free. It's on every device we run into. We probably go through 1 million Linux devices a day. And even though Red Hat or Fedora, or like all these things, even like FreeBSD that Mac OS is built on is like a Unix variant, kind of Linux-like, but all the original stuff was free. And like, that's what it gave to the world, was this thing you could build on top of. So that's the first mission, which is like, you shouldn't have to go pay money to take a course to learn what I'm talking about. You should be able to go and access it the same way I use the heck out of my public library card. So that's the first thing I'm trying to build.
Yeah, no, I love how you started by responding by saying you feel so, I don't know, amazed by the fact that we're at a time where the knowledge is becoming available to us. So I love that. And also I love that you're kind of militant about the free of this. And then what you're trying to do is help others. You're trying to help others make sense of it. So really noble. Yeah.
I think that I don't like gatekeeping. I don't like gurus. I don't like people who like sell stuff, because I think it prevents something that is more important than, business and like startups and founders and exits and venture capital, which is, there are lots of people out there who have ideas either for something they want to make and sell, like a business product. Sure. Maybe they have art. Maybe they have some sort of science. Maybe they have some sort of economic disadvantage. And so it's like, if we could make stuff that would let somebody who could be the next Einstein or be the next Curie or be the next Stephen King. I'm here in Maine, Stephen King's original mansion's like 3 blocks away. And they could do it now with the technology that is a part of the world now. They should be able to do that. And I mean, the core is like, I have all these novels I want to write, all these big book series. I just keep getting older and older. I'm never going to get it done. So what if this technology could help me bring my characters into the world so someone could read them and be inspired or take comfort in them? What if somebody wants to, last week, somebody sequenced an mRNA vaccine for a disease their dog had. They used it for ChatGPT.
I saw that. Right? Amazing story.
And so it's like, look, there's enough oligarchs in the world who are like trying to extract and strip mine everything they can out of humanity, because they have that disease of wealth that makes them want to accumulate wealth. I want to undercut all that.
I love it. Is some of this already available? Or are you still in the builds? Are you working on it? Or can people go find some of this?
The OpenVector site is up at open.zerovector.design. And it has like the first pass at all the different curriculum modules and little tests and quizzes that takes anyone from, 0 to 1. Like, what's the terminal? What's Git? What is a file? What's an IDE? These are questions that to some of us seem really easy to answer, but some people, I mean, they've never heard of any of this. And these are people that work in tech or work in products.
So you're building it kind of in like launching it live in real time over days, weeks, months, kind of like building on it?
Well, I built the initial site and framework and platform and curriculum with all the basics that I feel like I needed to know. And it came from, I was doing my own live stream podcast.
Yeah.
And I was trying to show people how to get started. And we ran into the classic thing where it's like, okay, so go to your terminal and type npm install whatever. And they're like, I don't know what any of that is. It's like, okay, you know what the terminal is? It's like, I don't know what any of that is. So I wrote this article like a month and a half ago called Where's the Any Key? Press any key.
Oh my gosh.
And all the different terms. Then I realized, holy crap, there are people here that you can't even get to AI powered building because you don't even know how to get the tools installed on your computer. Right. You don't even know how to do anything. You don't even know what an API is. You don't.
I was going to say there's a lack of knowledge on terminology and just the vernacular for sure. It goes back to that knowledge, that knowledge base. How can people find you? Like, I know you're on LinkedIn. You have your own website, or what's the best place to learn more about you?
At this point, I'm going to direct everybody to zerovector.design.
Perfect.
And that's just the manifesto and the clearinghouse for everything, and go from there. And if someone wants to go to my website, there's not a lot there, but hello, erikaflowers.com, and Erika's ERIKA. that's where like I have like my podcast and the blog post, or I guess the Substack. I'm trying to like be an essayist more than anything else, because this stuff is going to change so rapidly, and there are so many different places you have to learn and so many different voices. I'm trying to really specifically produce content, free content always, and help that gives people the fundamentals so that they can then go and learn whatever the flavor of the week frenzy is over whatever new whatever is released. And I have an article I'm ready. I got to figure out how to phrase this. And a friend of mine named Paul Tomlinson, who is my VR technology friend who worked at Mural together, super smart, way smarter than me. And he gave me this phrase, so I can't steal it because he'll probably listen to this. But we all know about the old saying, give a person a fish, feed him for a day, teach a person to fish. I have the third one that I stole from Paul. It's like, give a person a fish, teach a person to fish, build a fishery, institute a culture of fishing. I start at that end. If I can institute a culture of fishing, then other people can build fisheries, which can then leverage all the people who learned how to fish, which then can provide people that you need to give the final fish. And so I want to start at that end there. And that means the most powerful tool I have, Confucius said this. I sound like the president, right? I'm like, Confucius said this. No, but this is true. Confucius said, if you want to change a people, change their language. And he didn't mean change the like language they speak from, Chinese or Cantonese or Mandarin or whatever. Confucius meant change the way they talk about themselves, about each other, and you will start to change the culture. And so that's why the Zero Vector Manifesto, first and foremost, is about changing culture and how we look at each other, because then that culture will create those fisheries, which teach people to fish.
We'll put the website on and we'll put it in notes and for sure share it both on YouTube and the podcast outlets. Like Erika, where we landed here, we just covered a lot of ground. I mean, we covered your career, some of your concerns, some of your excitement, amazing like arc. And you even said just the amount of changes you've made in your career path. I think it's inspiring. We often find guests that are either disruptors, they've been disrupted, or they're observing the disruption. I feel like you almost sit across all three of those. You've been disrupted. Your world has changed. You've been kind of a disruptor. You're completely changing the way things are being built. Thank you for joining. It's been an amazing conversation.
That's great. I mean, talking about this stuff is how I figure it out and how other people figure it out. And I don't really anymore, given the last several years and all the changes in myself and work and the world, I don't really have a goal anymore other than to unblock other people's creativity. And so I'm not trying to make money. I don't have a startup. I don't have an idea. I just want to unblock other people's creativity at scale to where I'm known and like world famous for having done that and never profited off it at all.
No, one person at a time. It reflects part of the reason why we started Disruptor Confessions. It's basically very similar basis, which is how do I make sense of the chaos? How do I make sense of the disruption occurring? And unless I can have conversation with people like yourselves from all different disciplines and bring it and try to make sense of it for that 80%, the people, the rest, I call it the podcast for the rest of us, stealing the Apple computer line from the 80s. It's the podcast for the rest of us, trying to make sense of the chaos, the disruption happening. Hey, listen, Erika, thanks again. Hey, if you listened or watched this episode of Disruptor Confessions, please share it with others if you've enjoyed it, if it resonated with you. We always ask you to follow, subscribe, comment. And I think to this conversation, I always recommend stay curious, and enjoy the ride. Erika, thanks again.
Thank you. And if you didn't like this podcast, send it to someone you don't like.
I love it. All right, we'll let you go. Erika, thanks again. Amazing conversation. You. Appreciate it.